Greetings, students, and welcome to this special domestic edition of The Professor Travel. I am your host, The Professor Travel, coming to you from Orange County, California. This is the website, the vlog, and the podcast that you come to in order to learn about different travel destinations. This is where we come as a community in order to discuss more. Hopefully, this will inspire you to travel more and ultimately to enjoy life more. Now, you can reach us at a variety of different social media platforms, starting, of course, with my website at theprofessortravel.com. You can now reach me on YouTube, Facebook, and on TikTok at The Professor Travel. If you're an Instagrammer, you can find me there at the_professor_travel. If you're a Twitterer, you can find me on Twitter at theprofessortr1. And then finally, if you are a blogger, you can find me on Blogspot at theprofessortravel.blogspot.com. Today, I am welcoming back two of our returning visiting professors, Chris and Laura Barnett. How are you both doing today?
We're good.
Doing great.
How about
How are you?
Oh, I'm doing well. Thank you so much. Happy Saturday to you. This is when we're interviewing.
Yep.
Now, before we get started, I have a wonderful picture posted in our PowerPoint in front of us. Now, for those of you who are listening on the podcast, you're just going to have to come over to the YouTube in order to see all this wonderful stuff. But for the benefit of my students who are listening, can you share with us a little bit about the background on this photo?
So that is a picture of Laura and I on our honeymoon in 1992 on Carnival Mardi Gras.
Wow, that's amazing. Do you have plans to go on to the new Mardi Gras in the relative future, the brand new one?
We do. We're booked on the Halloween cruise on October the 30th on the Mardi Gras.
Wow, that's gonna be a lot of fun.
We're hoping it sails
as well. Yes.
I think probably again, this is no guarantee, and I don't work for the CDC or or anybody else, but my personal opinion is that I think we're going to probably start to see some travel resuming in August, September. So if it's by the end of October that you guys are due to travel, I think that's probably going to be safer to be able to do it at that point. So again,
we hope.
Yes, I'm crossing my fingers for you too. Now,
and we're also booked on the Mardi Gras for the 50th birthday celebration, the Celebration Cruise.
Can you tell me more about that?
So Carnival turns 50 in 2022.
Oh wow! Okay.
So Carnival's first ship was the Mardi Gras in 1972, and we were on it in '92 for our honeymoon. And then 2022 is, they kick off the celebration of the 50 years with the Celebration Cruise. So the Mardi Gras and most of the other ships are all going to do a big meetup at sea. And so it'll be, some throwback, parties and, photo ops with all the ships, next to each other and just a big party. And then they'll end the 50-year celebration with the inaugural Celebration Cruise coming out. And we're also booked on that cruise.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to have to get more information as you guys do all of your wonderful excursions. And speaking of that, for the benefit of my students who haven't heard your previous vlog or podcast, which again has not yet been released at the time of recording right now, but they will see it first in the relative future. Can you maybe share with us a little bit about your background, either some of your educational background or maybe a couple of places that you have traveled before?
Well, I've been doing IT work. I'm self-taught. Actually, I did get a nursing degree. But I did that for 3 years, and so I went into computers, and I'm pretty much self-taught, but I've been doing that now for 30-something years, and or about 30 years, and we have been to quite a few places. We've been to Paris, London, Edinburgh. Been to Mexico a bunch of times, as you can tell, this last year. And, I've been on 11 cruises and Laura's been on 10.
Oh, wow.
I got one over.
I went with my mom. Yeah, he went on one with his mom.
Aw. I thought he just wanted to try it out first before he brought you along, Laura. That was what it
No,
was. You just want to make sure it was safe, just
He
making sure
kept-
it's safe. That's
he kept
important.
hearing his mom and his sister always going on these mother-daughter trips, and he's like, "Well, when are we going to go on a mother-son trip?" And she's like, "Well, when do you want to go?" And he's like, "Well, whatever." And she's like, "Where do you want to go?" He's like, "A cruise." So the two of them went on a cruise.
And Laura, a little bit about your background as well.
Well, we're both originally from Mississippi, and I went to school in at Jackson Academy.
Okay.
From the time I was in kindergarten all the way through graduation, and went to Belhaven College. At the time, it was Belhaven College. Now it's known as Belhaven University.
Okay.
And got a degree in elementary education, and have been teaching elementary since 1990 for the most part. I've taught every grade, kindergarten through high school, except for sixth. That's the only grade I've never taught full time. And currently, I am working at a community college with adults who need to improve their reading skills in order to take the GED.
Wonderful. Well, that's great. That's great work. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for introducing yourselves. And as you had alluded to, today's topic is going to be on the great state of Mississippi, where you guys both originally had come from. So I really don't know that much about the history of Mississippi, but I know you guys have a little bit, you're a little bit more steeped in it than I am. And so I wanted to have a conversation, an opportunity to share this. But before we even get into that, I know, Chris, you had a little bit of a story about a historical figure from Mississippi, Medgar Evers, and something that had happened to you personally. Can you share that with the students?
Sure. So, I was born in, the early 60s, and so I've seen, quite a few things, over the years. And, the first, 25 or so years of my life, half or maybe more than half was, in Mississippi. And so I I remember, I'll start with Medgar Evers first. So, as an adult, I was going back to night school, and we were taking business law. And so, one of the bonus points that we could get for the course is to attend, some court proceedings, to watch how the law works. And so, the trial for the murder of Medgar Evers, Byron de la Beckwith, was just happening. It was the big news, all around, Mississippi, that finally, after all these years, he was being brought back to, to face, justice. And so I got to sit in on 2 days of the court proceedings. And, that was interesting in and of itself, because, almost all the witnesses, or actually all the witnesses, were dead. So they were transcripts that, that they would read. And, it's almost like Perry Mason, moments in the courtroom. But I sat on the third row, about 6 feet away from Byron de la Beckwith. And, a few times when he would turn around and look in the courtroom, it's just, you could just see the evil in his eyes. I mean, when somebody's bad, and, so that was just interesting. But the second day that I attended the trial, they had, wrapped up the, the arguments, and, they were closing, court for the day. And I got an opportunity to introduce myself and meet Merle Evers. And, that was really neat. And if you remember the movie Mississippi Burning, that was about Medgar Evers and all of the stuff that was going on. And, with the trial, I think, was touched on in the movie, and stuff. And, it was just interesting to be a part of that. But to go back to another thing I wanted to tell you, as far as what I've seen in where we were and where we've come today, is, as a little boy, 7 years old, I remember seeing the buses for the segregated schools back in the day, and the buses had big bold letters, separate but equal, and I just remember that sticking out to me. Like, what does that mean? Even why do we have separate schools? And our doctor's office, where we go for it was a dentist and a doctor, and like if neither one of them could cover it, you didn't need a doctor. But it was the doctor's clinic, whatever. They had separate waiting rooms. They had separate water fountains, and by the at the time I'm 7 years old, we're talking about the late 60s, early 70s, will be the late 60s, that they still had separate waiting rooms for colored folks and for everybody else.
Yeah.
And I can remember when I saw that, I'm like, I went over and sat and waited in the colored folks waiting room, because I didn't feel it was right for them to have to sit over there by themselves. So it's just interesting. It's personal to me. I've seen things that shouldn't be, and I think we've come a long way. Even in today's times, with all the problems we've had, they're so much better than they were.
Yeah, I would say Mississippi is one of those interesting states with such a complicated history. And I think we have to look at it from a unique lens and understanding, at one point it was a very difficult series of situations that were going on there, and it has improved. In fact, I think the African American population, specifically in Mississippi, has significantly grown in the last several years, as I think some of the Latino population has as well too.
Yeah.
So in terms of the history of the state, what can you share with me about and share with my students as well about the history of the area in general?
Well, I mean, I know it was involved big time, in civil rights, and there was a lot that went on there. I'm not as up on history as I should be.
That's okay.
But I know things have improved, but things still have a ways to go.
Well, Mississippi was a huge farming community, and growing cotton and stuff, cotton and soybean and corn and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of people tend to think more racist problems when they hear Mississippi, but really, they're just common folk, just family folk, and just so far, I guess, removed from really what's going on everywhere else in the world, just because it's just so country. We don't have large population areas, so we, 30 years ago, we were, like 6 months behind when a movie would come out before we get to see it, stuff like that. So just common folk really is all I can, I don't know.
No, actually, you make a really good point, because it encapsulates an area that's almost like frozen in time to certain extent, and that's not necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. It's just something, it's a characteristic to note, because if you're going to this area to visit, it does give you some awareness of, oh, I can take a look back 6 months, for example, and see what was going on, or the way in which things were learned. It is primarily because it is so far removed. There aren't these sprawling metropolis,
Right.
like a Los Angeles or Miami or places like that. I think the closest one really, and I mean, yeah, you have Shreveport and you have places that are relatively close, but like I was making mention to you one time, I went to go visit Biloxi on a little gambling trip, and really not a very super huge town, but that's probably one of the more populated areas
Yeah.
that is in Mississippi, because it is primarily a farming and rural community.
Yeah.
So it does make sense. That's why it's developed that way. But I think in terms of history, there was a Native American population that was out there. Do you
Yeah.
remember the name of the tribe that was predominant in the area there? I think you had mentioned it earlier.
Yeah, so the Choctaw Indians have a huge presence, but also the Cherokee, Choctaw and Cherokee have a presence, and then it's the Chippewa
Yeah.
Indians.
The name Mississippi was given
Yeah.
to the Mississippi River by the Chippewa Indians. In their language, Mississippi means large river.
Okay, which makes sense considering the size of that thing.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
So when we think about Mississippi, where my mind goes is usually around just a little after 1803 with the Louisiana Purchase, and when we were starting to get states that were in the area. Do you guys maybe have any idea when Mississippi became a state, or around when it became a state? I gotta imagine it was relatively early
Yeah, I
on.
had that. I don't know.
Because I know one of the colleges that was founded there was in 1822.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't remember. We're both trying to.
Quickly Google. This is like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to spring this on you. I apologize.
No, that's okay. We should have.
We should have looked this up.
December 10th, 1817.
That makes sense. That makes sense then. Okay, so it became a state in 1817, and I think one of its first colleges, as we may mention, in fact, I think one that Laura you're familiar with, had founded itself in 1822. Correct?
Yeah, yeah. I got my graduate degrees at Mississippi College.
Fantastic, excellent.
I'm ashamed I didn't know the date that Mississippi was started, because I took so many Mississippi history classes, because I think we had like 3 classes that were required, in the first, second, and third grade, for Mississippi history. But
and I think one of the reasons that, when we think about a state like Mississippi as being so complicated is because you think about the involvement of the Ku Klux Klan or various different challenges that have been as part of the civil rights movements as we go along
that kind
through
of
its history.
stands out in Mississippi history, is some of its negative history.
Yeah.
That's why I say it's complicated, but I mean, like, especially like during the 1920s when the Klan was at its height and stuff like that. So I mean, you have those things that are going on, but like as you made mention, again, just because there aren't those huge rural or urban metropolis, because there aren't those things, that does create a little bit of a complexity of knowing this. But there are some cities that are there and that are sizable. Let's talk a little bit about where the state is exactly located, especially for the international viewers who may not understand where Mississippi is within proximity of other states. So can you tell me what states might surround the area of Mississippi?
Sure. So if you're looking at if you look at a map, you have the Gulf of Mexico is on the bottom of Mississippi, and then you have Alabama to the right, all the way up to Tennessee on the top right. Or actually, no, Tennessee doesn't touch. Yes, it does cross the top.
Mhm.
Tennessee's across the top, Alabama all the way up to Tennessee, and then you have Arkansas on the top left, and then you have a little bit of Louisiana on the bottom left. So
wonderful. And as we talk about, if I was going to be a tourist visiting the area, there are some extreme climate conditions I'd want to be aware of. One of the things I was talking about, that trip I made to Biloxi a few years ago, and that was just I would say probably a little over a year after Hurricane Katrina had hit the Gulf Coast area, especially Louisiana. And as part of that, I remember very vividly going over some of the hillsides, and it looked like a nuclear bomb had hit, and all of the trees for miles had just been knocked down. So, I mean, the things I think about in terms of extreme weather that sometimes hit the area there, obviously, we once in a while you'll hit a hurricane, or you have tornadoes that will sometimes come up. But but for the most part, those are relatively rare. They're not like regular occurrence, like weekly or daily, even daily occurrences, right?
Yeah.
Like when you think about the weather within the area, you have your typical four seasons. Although I would imagine winter is not as cold or as prominent because it's such a southern
Well,
area.
well, Mississippi really has. So we have not so hot, and then we have hot, and then we have really hot, and then we have, you know, one day of, fall, and then, so I'm being
He's
funny, but
exaggerating a little bit. We might have 3 days of
Yeah.
fall.
Okay. Oh, good. Yeah, that makes it so much better.
a few days of fall and a few days of spring, and then it's basically summer, and you know, then we get
A little bit of
a
winter.
little bit of winter.
Fall is my favorite time because it's, cool or whatever, but it never lasts very long.
That's what I'm saying. But if you only get 3 days of it, you're going to have to
Yeah.
travel somewhere else.
Yeah.
Like, I'll go up north a little bit and maybe I'll get something from up there.
We
Or it gives you an
get what
opportunity.
they call Indian summer. So you have summer, and then you get those cooling afternoons, and sometimes around the 1st of October, you get a little fall brisk coolness in the air, and then we get Indian summer. It gets warm again.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the culture in the area. Now, I've noticed that when I was doing research, at least with the predominant religion of the area, I mean, it's definitely Christianity, and it seems like it's a variety of different Christianity
Yeah.
subsects, including Southern Baptist as being one of the biggest ones down there, correct?
Yes.
Yep. Mississippi is, I think there are more Mississippians that go to church than in any other state.
Yeah. I was reading that, and it said there are also more churches in Mississippi per capita than in any other state in the country.
All right, cool.
And the nation's largest Bible binding plant is located in Greenwood, Mississippi, close to where he grew up.
Okay, then. Now, in terms of art, and when I think of art, I think of whether it's physical artists, whether it's musicians, whether it's actors or celebrities. You have quite a few. Surprisingly, quite a few that come out of Mississippi. The ones I have just on the screen here: Britney Spears, James Earl Jones, Jim Henson, Elvis Presley, B.B. King. Those are just a sampling. But of course, you've mentioned to me prior to this, Morgan Freeman started there, Oprah Winfrey as well. I mean, there's just
William Faulkner, Eudora Welty, John Grisham,
wow.
Gary Clower,
Just
and
so many.
Jerry Rice, football player,
Mhm.
and Greg Iles is an author from there. He writes a lot about Natchez.
Excellent. That's just it's so I'm always amazed at how many celebrities can come out of a specific area, especially when we're talking in this particular case of a more rural community or a more rural state. It just I'm really surprised by
Of course,
that.
now we've caught up. The last 50 years, Mississippi is caught up now. So it's you'd be hard pressed to tell you're in Mississippi now, unless you look at the at the trees. But if you drop somebody in the middle of Jackson or Gulfport or somewhere like that, other than the accent, you'd be hard pressed to tell where you are.
Well, I'm sure it's not exactly Las Vegas. So
No.
that's true.
With the nullification of America, though,
Yeah, no, absolutely. Let's also quickly talk about language. Again, primarily English is spoken there, but there's a distinctive drawl that comes out of there. Now, I wasn't sure because I know with Louisiana, for example, there is a French influence there. I wasn't sure if there was anything like that in Mississippi at all. Are you aware of anything, or as far as any alternative languages to English that might be spoken within the state?
Not that I'm
No,
aware
I
of.
mean, I remember, we had a lot of, we had several Vietnamese communities that sprung up after, the Vietnam War.
Hmm.
So I think they were welcome, to come to Mississippi, and so we had a neat little, um, you know, I don't know, Vietnam town. It's
Like
like,
community, yeah.
yeah, but so that was interesting. But yeah, I don't I don't really I'm not just well versed in all the different languages. I'm not familiar with many anyway.
That's fine. And then I imagine on some of the Native American locations, there are
So
probably
obviously,
native
yeah,
tongues as well. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
bunch of small Indian tribes, definitely. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Let's get into talking about my favorite subject, which is diet and food. Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah.
I have a couple of pictures on the screen here of a couple of major dishes that come out of the South and specifically out of Mississippi. The first one is Mississippi mud pie, which looks amazing. And as we get closer to my lunchtime, I'm going to definitely consider, what I'm going to have to eat. But then also soul food. There's a lot of soul food that comes from down there. Some really good barbecue. Um, what are some things that really strike to you in terms of Mississippi, like distinctively? Like, what are some things that you like out of there?
Fried catfish.
Yeah.
Fried catfish.
Fried catfish, chicken, fried chicken.
Turnip
Well,
greens, cornbread.
in the South, we like everything fried. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
in fact, Laura, you were saying there was a place that you guys liked that was relatively famous, or that you were aware of it that you'd like to go to that had a lot of different things there. Southern
What are you
cooking
talking
wise.
about? The cock of the walk?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, their main thing that they have is fried catfish. I mean,
Mm,
you can't go expecting to, order a steak or a burger or anything like that. You're gonna get catfish.
Yeah.
Now whether you have anything with it, like turnip greens and coleslaw and cornbread and all that. I mean, basically the only decision you have to make is how many orders of catfish are you going to order for the table. And then they're going to bring, and they flip the cornbread at the table, which is kind of cool because like a lot of times they'll flip it behind them and catch it, and so yeah, it's a really cool place. And they have you get your water or your tea or whatever you get to drink in a tin cup.
mm.
And they serve everything on tin plates. And it's like wooden picnic tables that you're there and you're overlooking the reservoir. So yeah, it's one of our favorite places in Mississippi. We hadn't been in a while.
You were talking to me also about pickle chips, like fried pickle chips.
Fried pickles.
Fried pickles. Yep.
I've never had that before.
Oh, you need to have
Oh
them. They're
yeah,
amazing.
it's good. Just get you some dill pickles and batter them up and fry them.
And dip them in ranch.
Oh yeah.
Dip them in ranch. That's the key.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can eat them by themselves. They're good by themselves too.
Yeah. The pickle chips, the slices like what you put on a hamburger, not the whole pickle.
Got it.
But yeah, they're good. And if you go to Mississippi is known for their cuisine, the old town soul food, I guess, like you say. If you could find a good mom and pop restaurant, you're gonna have fried pork chops, fried chicken, butter beans, black eyed peas, corn on the cob,
Potato salad, baked
beans,
beans,
baked beans, yeah. I'm trying to turnip greens, collard greens.
You really make me hungry right now. So
Just good, good food. I mean, that's what I remember most about the food in Mississippi. Now, of course, we do have a lot of fancy, places, and it's the catfish and this and that, but that's what I think of when I want to eat home food.
One of my favorite meals that my mom would do is when she would go to the farmer's market in the summer and get a whole bunch of fresh vegetables and we would have a vegetable dinner, like he was talking about with the turnip greens and the lima beans and the black-eyed peas and the fresh tomatoes and just
The purple whole peas.
the corn on the cob and all that. Just have tons of fresh vegetables.
Wow, that's amazing. And then in terms of sports and recreation in your state, obviously, I don't think there are any major sports teams out of Mississippi directly, not as far as major league teams, but
No.
it's the college teams though. That's where they shine because you have Ole Mississippi. Ole Miss is a big one. What's the other major college team that you would say is there?
Mississippi State.
Yep.
Mississippi State
And University of Southern Mississippi, the Golden Eagles. So we actually have 3 big college teams.
Fantastic. Awesome.
But Ole Miss and Mississippi State are big rivals.
Fantastic. Yep. And then in terms of holidays, is there any state-specific holidays that you remember growing up with in Mississippi that you were aware of?
No, not that we're aware of. I mean, we just had your typical state holidays, like Martin Luther King Day and I don't know, yeah, not anything that just really stands out like, Mardi Gras for Louisiana.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, let's talk then about the population of your state. Now, you know what the population of Mississippi was, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about
3 million.
Yeah, about 3 million.
Okay. And as I look to this map that's on the screen right now, and again, for my viewers that are out there, you can go on to the YouTube channel in order to look us up at The Professor Travel. There's a couple of major population centers that I'm noting here. What's the area along the southern coast that's here?
All right. So from left to right, that's going to be the Gulfport area, and now I don't know all the little smaller areas, but the first major part that you see is going to be Gulfport, and then Biloxi is going to be to the right of that. But so much of that is just kind of all one kind of big, never really leave civilization, because it's the coast. So it's a major tourist spot. So you've got all your typical stuff there. So it's probably, I think it's 120 something miles from coast to coast, or from border to border for that area. So probably 90 of it is populated.
Okay.
And we need to teach your students how the correct way to say the coastal city Biloxi. We have heard people mispronounce it Biloxi because it's spelled that way, and it's like no. It's
Biloxi.
Yes, yep. Biloxi.
Biloxi. Got it.
Yeah,
Thank
not Biloxi.
Now, what is this area here? It looks like a large population center. Is that the capital?
Right, so that's going to be the Jackson, Mississippi area.
That's Jackson. Okay.
Yeah. So it's a little bit interesting to do with Jackson. So Jackson, Mississippi was designed by I don't remember all of my history, but one of the generals after or not one of the generals, I'm mixing my stories up. When Jackson was planned, though, I have to go back. The city was planned. It was a square city, and it was the exact center from east to west and north to south of the state. So if you were to take the westernmost piece of the state and the rightmost and the topmost and bottommost and draw a square map, even though the state doesn't fill it all in, Jackson's in the square middle.
Okay, excellent.
So I'll side note in case you ever
I'm just curious. There appears to be a little population center up in the top here. Do you happen to know what that might be by any chance?
That is I guess the suburbs of Memphis. That's South Haven area.
Okay.
Horn Lake, South Haven, all of that area, just below the border to Tennessee. Where Memphis is. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, when I think about the economy, there are a lot of large companies. There are a lot of large nonprofits that are in the area. University of Mississippi Medical Center is probably one of the largest employers in the area. as well as the Nissan Corporation. Very, very, very large manufacturing plant there. And then you have a couple of different casinos, such as, is it Beau Rivage? Is that how it's pronounced?
Yes,
okay. I got my French down. Okay, that's good. Harris has got something out there. Tunica Roadhouse, they've got a space out there as well. A couple of colleges, like as we said, Mississippi State, University of Miss, Hines Community College. They appear to have a couple of large centers there as well. The Tyson chicken plants, they have several over in that area. And then, of course, the Mississippi Band of the Choctaw Indians, they have the Native Americans that are there. They have a large presence as well, and they also do a significant employment. But you were mentioning something earlier about catfish and the prominence of that in your state as well. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So Mississippi is the catfish capital of the world. So I think it's 100,000 acres, 90 to 100,000 acres of catfish pond for farm raised catfish.
Now, for those who don't know exactly what it means to be a farming community for catfish, because when you're thinking about a farm, I'm thinking about chickens and ducks or crops or things like that. What do you mean by a farm of catfish? How does that mean?
So they have 100,000 acres of catfish ponds, and so they have a whole bunch of catfish in these ponds. And Belzona, Mississippi is considered like he said, the catfish capital of the world. And 94% of all farm raised catfish in the United States are raised in Mississippi.
So are these ponds like closed off from predators and things like that? Do you know, or like, are they protected?
No, I mean, for the most part, they're, I've been to, a couple of them, and if you want to go swim in the lake, you could go, unless they have, their property fenced off. But, a lot of times you can drive out there and they're just ponds. They just grow fish, they stock them with fish and keep them going. Now some of them have a full enough production. And so it's like the public can't get to them, but
okay.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the catfish ponds they're just ponds. They just stock with a lot of catfish, and of course they're watched, to make sure nobody's doing something nefarious. But
yeah, I like poaching catfish or something a little bit crazy like that. That could be a little.
Literally, you probably could get away with it. I mean, it's Mississippi is not very populated around that area, so unless it was a big place, you could drive down to see a pond and it's like I'm gonna go get me a fish, but you could literally less than 15 minutes cast your rod, catch a fish, throw it in the car and go home and cook it and eat it. I'm serious.
No, I believe you. I can imagine how populated those ponds must be then. Let's talk really quick about travel and transportation. How are the roads in Mississippi? Like, are they
not great?
Not that good? Okay.
They got lots of potholes.
Lots of potholes. They part of the problem is red clay. So, it's always settling and, moving, and it's very, very hard to keep, pavement in good shape.
I think the workers have job security because they fix it like the day before it's going to rain. You see them out there working on the potholes and filling them in, and then it rains and washes all that out. So then you still have a pothole, and so they kind of create their own little job security, I guess. I don't know, because the roads are always bad.
Yeah, Mississippi don't manage their roads well either. Their money management for the roads are nefariously awful.
Oh gosh. What about as far as other transportation modes, like whether it's trains or airports? Are there ever even any international airports down in that area if you want to travel outside the country?
They do have I don't know all the international airport destinations, but they have an airport in Jackson, they have an airport in Gulfport, and they have several smaller regional airports that are not necessarily going to be by your big major airlines using them or anything. But that's really it. They may have one in Biloxi as well. I'm not just real familiar with the airports. We do have north-south train and east-west train that does come through, but most of it's is
I took a
interstate
train in
and
the night, in
highway.
the early '90s when I was first teaching. I went on a field trip. The small school I was teaching at, the principal liked, because it was so small and it was primarily seminary families, because of the seminary was local. And she knew these families wouldn't be able to afford to travel or whatever as much as maybe some other people. So she would try to do big field trips for the kids. And one year she took the 7th and 8th graders to Canada and asked me to go on the field trip and chaperone. And so we took a train from Jackson, and we went to Chicago and then went on to Canada. And so that was fun, riding the train from Jackson.
That's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of travel and tourism, I want to talk about that for just a second, because as I mentioned, I've been to Biloxi, and in the time I spent there, I was really interested to know about how gambling was something that was even able to be done there. And my friend shared with me, he's like, gambling on the land itself is not okay, but at least at the time when we went. But it turns out that they have these almost, I don't know how to explain it other than saying kind of like a barge, where they put this wooden planking on the water, and then they build the casino on the wooden planking. So therefore it's technically on a little lake and not on the land. But the problem was that was when Hurricane Katrina came in, it filled up the area with so much water, it actually pushed some of these barges onto the land. And so it was like, okay, well, they had to get special dispensation or something like that in order to be able to have the gambling available during that time. So in terms of travel and tourism, what are some major tourist spots? What are some, are there any amusement parks in Mississippi that you're aware of?
I can't think of it. The only water park I remember is Rapids on the Reservoir, that used to have some water rides. And so I can't think of any amusement parks.
I can't think of an amusement park that Mississippi did have. But we did have several things that drew tourists. Obviously we had the Gulf Coast and the beach.
And the gambling.
And the gambling.
Elvis Presley's birthplace usually, draws some attention in Tupelo, Mississippi.
Yep.
What about in terms of, being the catfish capital of the world, is there like a catfish festival or some kind of like big celebration where they'll do a lot of different things with catfish?
There are. I don't know enough about it to tell you, but yes, there. It would be in Belzona. I've never been to it, but we also I'm just remembering. So you ever heard of the Neshoba County Fair?
I was just fixing to say, what's the name of that?
Talk to me about that. What's going on with that?
So it was just one of the of course every county has a county fair, or they used to, and Neshoba was always had a lot of Indian culture, and a lot of politicians made stops there. So it just became a big thing. I think they had a dog racing track.
I don't remember.
There,
I just remember
several different things.
Kind of a big political.
It just really kind of became a pretty major deal. Neshoba County Fair was, everybody was talking about it every year it came around.
People go and hang out and visit, and there's like all these little cabins or whatever, and you just kind of hang out on the porch and drink sweet tea and talk and hang out. But it is hot. I've been one time and it was hot. But hotter than other places in Mississippi. I don't know. There never seemed to be a breeze that day. It was hot.
But you could find just about anything there though, and it Neshoba County is kind of in the bottom left corner of the state, so it's close to Louisiana and New Orleans. So you get a lot of the New Orleans people would come up to it, and so it was a big cultural mix of things. So it was kind of like the big news from Mississippi, there for a long time.
Another big thing is the Canton Flea Market.
Yeah.
It usually lasts for like a couple of days, and I think it's in the fall. I don't remember if they have it twice a year or once a year, but I know they at least have it in the fall, like in October, because I remember helping a friend of mine that I'd worked with. She and her husband had it was like a woodcraft business. He would make all kind of different, things like door hangers or just different wood crafts, and she would do the painting of them and stuff, and they would sell. And I remember helping her one time, and we had to get there at like 4:30 in the morning to get everything set up. And there would be people that would come from Louisiana and from all over to come to the Canton Flea Market, and they'd be ready to spend. They'd come with their dollars, get off the buses sometime, and ready to buy their crafts.
I imagine so.
So yeah, it was all kind of different crafts.
Now, I know that the government of Mississippi on a federal level is primarily conservative, and I think for the most part, in fact, I'm almost sure on the local and state level, it is also conservative too. Correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, perfect. And then in terms of natural resources, the things that came to mind when I was doing my research on Mississippi were the vast amount of lumber that is available through the state of Mississippi, as well as oil and gas. Are there any other major natural resources that pronounce themselves to you?
Lumber is a big one. Like my family owns some land in Houston, Mississippi, and they do like a thinning of trees every so often, and they get money for this. I don't understand how it all works because I've kind of stayed out of the business end of it all. It's never really interested in me, but I do know that they will do a thinning of the tree and sell the lumber or whatever, because furniture is a big thing in North Mississippi.
That's a big industry actually.
Do they actually have craftsmen that are there that actually do it? Okay. Very cool. Now, in terms of education, this is where we get into a little bit of your college that you've been to. But I mean, obviously, I was really taken aback. I was really quite surprised about how old a lot of these colleges are. University of Mississippi back from 1848, Mississippi State from 1878, Jackson State from 1877, and then of course the one that you attended, Mississippi College, from 1826. I thought it was 1822, but I guess it's actually 1826. That is just. These are really, really old colleges that have had a long, long history in the state of Mississippi. Are there any other major ones that maybe I'm forgetting?
No, I mean, there's, like I mentioned before, there's
Southern Mississippi.
University of Southern Mississippi as well in Hattiesburg. And then I went to Belhaven College, which is a private Presbyterian college that's been around a while.
There's quite a few private.
I don't remember exactly what year Belhaven started. I know it's been around for a while. I know my mother went back to school. Let's see, it was founded in 1883.
Okay.
What's that college across?
Millsaps.
Millsaps, yeah.
Millsaps
is fairly famous.
Belhaven and Millsaps are kind of rivals, just like Mississippi State and and Ole Miss are. But yeah, Belhaven's been around since like 1883. And so I went there for my 4 years of college, and then I started at Ole Miss for my graduate work. But they were having some accreditation issues or whatever in their education department or whatever. So I ended up
tired of cross stitching.
Well, I was like cross stitching, 12 or 14 hours a day, going to class, taking 4 classes, had a 4.0 average, never saw the inside of the library. I don't even know where the library is. So I ended up transferring to Mississippi College and forgot what cross stitching was, and I lived in the library. Like on a day when I didn't go, my parents would say, well, did the library call and ask you where you were and tell you they were reserving your table? But so yeah, I got my graduate degrees at Mississippi College.
Excellent. Now, I know, Laura, before we had recorded this, we talked a little bit about the literacy rate, and it's not as high, obviously, as we would obviously love it to be.
Right. I think it's around 84%. It's not as like here in Alabama, it's 85%. So, I mean, it's kind of right around ours, but
But we were equating that might be in part because a lot of the resources from time to time seem to be funneled to a lot of the urban locations and leaves open a lot of these rural locations, which
Right.
Mississippi is primarily a lot more rural.
Right. And so there's a higher poverty level and more rural and less resources. And so that kind of contributes to the lower literacy rate.
And that's a vicious cycle on its own.
Yeah.
So that's a challenge. Now, in terms of safety and security, in terms of major crime issues or foreign or domestic terrorism, I don't think we've had any foreign terrorism activity that I've ever been aware of.
Not that I can recall.
Not that I can recall either.
And then in terms of domestic terrorism, I mean, obviously we talked about the Ku Klux Klan during the 1920s, and in the South has had a huge challenge with that over the course of many years. But in terms of like any specific major terrorism threats, I don't think there's anything that pops up that like no theater shootings or anything like that. Or and obviously with major cities, like you don't want to be dumb. You don't want to go out in a dark alley in the middle of the night, because obviously that can be dangerous regardless of where you're at.
Right.
So it just can be, one of those things, but the history of it all is just, basically be smart, stay safe, and you're gonna be fine for the most part.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, let's do this because I left that on such a downward note there. Let's bring it back up for a second. Okay, so let's say I have a ticket to fly to Jackson, for example, a round trip ticket in a minute or less. Why would I want to go to Mississippi? What's in it for me? Why would I want to visit there?
Well, it depends on where you would go. If you went to Jackson, there's a lot of good food options around there. It's kind of becoming a little foodie, place. I say Jackson, but the vicinity of Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
As with any city, you've got some good areas and bad areas, but there's a lot of different cultures. We've got several museums. There's the School of the Deaf and Blind.
Yeah, there's a Ballet Magnificat. You could go watch some ballet.
Mm-hmm. And of course, gambling.
Yeah, there's and then gambling in Tunica or on the coast,
or in
Tunica.
Yeah, but I'm thinking Natchez.
Oh yeah.
Natchez, and in Vicksburg, you can also gamble. And Vicksburg's only about a 40-minute drive from Jackson, so there's a lot of neat stuff around Vicksburg.
There's a lot of neat old antebellum homes in Natchez and in Vicksburg. The Vicksburg Military Park or whatever is there, Civil War Park.
We stayed at a bed and breakfast in Natchez once, and if you ever want to get a nice taste of old style Mississippi culture, go to Natchez, Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Excellent. Well, first off, I would like to thank the both of you for doing this again with me, Chris and Laura. You guys are amazing. Before we go into your channel, you want to show us your t-shirts that you guys are wearing? So you guys have your own channel, and that's See the World with Chris, and the See the World with Chris crew, which is the one that's on Facebook. But if you go onto YouTube, it's See the World with Chris, which is your channel, correct? Yeah. And what kind of things do you do on that channel? What kind of travel do you look at?
So it's mostly travel related, and it has been mostly cruise type stuff, other than some little things that I stuck up in the beginning, whatnot. But I've had my YouTube account since 2009, 8, somewhere around in there. And it's just I like to show where we've been, and here in the last year or so, I've really kind of started working toward trying to become better at editing
And grow the
and growing the
channel.
channel and putting stuff together. But it's this last year I've done a lot of travel or we have done a lot of travel in Mexico. We've been 4 times during the
Oh, wow.
pandemic. Yeah.
Well, it's wonderful, and I'm eager to see all of the videos and continue to monitor your travels. It'll be fun. Again, Chris and Laura, thank you so much. The website is also at seetheworldwithchris.com as well, in case people want to go see the website as well. So again, to the two of you, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
And I just started a TikTok too. See the World with Chris at TikTok.
Well, we'll have to visit you there. So thank you so much. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, for my students that are out there, if you have any questions or comments, let us know. We want to hear from you. You can send me a quick email at scott@theprofessortravel.com, and I'll be more than happy to respond to that. I'd love to get those emails, so continue to do that. If you're on YouTube right now and you like this content and you would like to see more of it, let us know by giving us a like up, and that shares and lets us know that you appreciate that content. To be notified when new videos go up, click that little bell icon right above us. And if you haven't already done so, please feel free to subscribe. We are more than happy to have you as part of the family and the community. Finally, if you're listening to us on any type of a podcasting service, again, we welcome that. Please feel free to rate us, review us. And then until our next time, my name is Scott. I am the Professor Travel, and make every day a travel adventure. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye now.